Well, I've got the chance to take a closer look at Jan van Berkel's bike. Now, Jan is the current Ironman Switzerland Champion, and this year at the Ironman World Championships, he's going to be riding this very nice and slightly unique Factor Slick. Okay, let's start with the frame itself. Factor is a relatively young brand, and you may have already heard of their Factor 1 road bike, which features something called twin vane Evo technology. This TT bike features that same technology, which is quite special and quite unique. It is essentially a split down tube, so there is a gap here within the frame so the air can flow through it to improve its aerodynamics, but all whilst keeping its stiffness through the bottom bracket and headset. But the really special bit on this frame is the custom paintwork, because Jan, being Swiss, he wanted to show off his Swiss origin, but without being quite so in your face with it with sort of the standard Swiss flag. So he's gone for this traditional artwork that comes from Switzerland called decoupage, and it is something that traditionally is made out of paper. So it's hand cut out of paper, very fine art. And he has this on his frame, which I absolutely love. But really interestingly is that this mountain range you can see on the rear stays here actually represents a horizon in Switzerland, so you can match that up with the mountains. And to add to that, after the Ironman World Championships this year, he's going to be getting married on the top of one of these mountains. Okay, well now let's take a look at the front end of the bike with the base bar and Aero Bar setup. Now this comes from 51 Speed Shop, which is a brand from Matt Steinmetz, who is a very famous and well-known bike fitter and coach from Boulder in Colorado. And actually 51 Speed Shop setup comes standard with the Factor Slick bike. But Jan has opted for the increasingly popular ski bend option with the Aero Bars, and he's got it set up quite tight and quite close and very aerodynamic. So Factor actually have a bottle mount which comes out between the pads, but because he's got it set up so close, he's actually had to have a custom mount made which extends a little bit further out so he can still mount the bottle and then his computer behind. Right, moving down from that and onto the wheels, and these are the black ink wheels, which are Factor's own brand, and they are the model called the 80, which would suggest that they are an 80mm rim depth. And for the tubular wheels, they are, but these are actually the clincher wheels, and these are actually coming at a 75mm rim depth. And for the rim width, they come in at 26.5mm, and on them, he's got the Continental Grand Prix TT tyres in a 23 front and rear. He has previously used 25mm for the Ironman Switzerland just for increased comfort, but here in Hawaii, he's going for the 23mm. And on the subject of the tyres, actually with the frame itself, it can accept anything up to 28mm in terms of the tyre width. The braking on the front is integrated into the fork here, and the rear brake, it's under the bottom bracket. It's not overly integrated, but it is hidden behind the bottom bracket design. Well, moving back and onto some of the other componentry, and given that Hawaii is quite a fast and flat course, he's running quite a large 55 42 tooth chainring setup. And whilst we're talking about the chainrings, actually, Factor have designed their front mech system so it can be quite easily and quickly removed, so you can run this one-by setup that we're seeing some people trying for some of these fast and flat courses. Whilst we're talking about the gearing, he's got an 1125 cassette, so quite a small and short range, but again quite well suited to this course out here, and that is all in Shimano Dura Ace. So on the front, on his Aero Bars and his base bar, he's got the electronic gearing for Shimano Dura Ace 9150, and that's actually in synchro shift, so that means he doesn't have the option to shift up to his big ring or into his small ring. It actually does it automatically as you're shifting through your cassette. As you go into those easier gears, it will drop it into the small ring for you, but also compensate by shifting up a couple of gears on the cassette. So there's none of these sudden changes in gearing. And on the back, for that derailleur, he's got the Ceramic Speed OSPW jockey wheels. So again, it's all about sort of smoothing out that chain flow, reducing the friction. And in fact, Ceramic Speed have kitted out this whole bike. So he's got Ceramic Speed bottom bracket bearings and headset bearings. And to finish off that componentry, he's using the Stages single-sided power meter. But interestingly, he's running it in a 160 crank length, which is quite short, but this was suggested to him by a previous coach that used to work for British Cycling and had Bradley Wiggins using 160mm crank length. So suggested it to him, and Jan's really got on well with it. And it's actually something we saw a lot of triathletes trialing out, as it sort of helps to open out the hips in preparation for the run off the bike. Works for Jan, so he's continued using that over the last few years. And on the end of those, he's got the Look Keo Blade pedals. We're now moving on to quite an important factor for triathlon bikes, and that is with the storage. So you'll have noticed already the storage box coming out of the seat tube, and this is Factor's Storer Pack. Jan is going to be using that on race day for his spares. Tubes, canisters, you name it. On the top tube here, he's got a profile designed storage box, or bento box, so he'll be having his race day gels in there, and he's actually had this slightly customized for him in that he's had it pushed forward slightly and integrated his Di2 junction box into that, so it's all nicely hidden. On race day, he's also going to have an aero bottle on the seat tube area here, which can help to improve aerodynamics. And then, as we mentioned already, he's got a standard bottle between his aero bars here on the front, and he's also got one coming off the rear of the saddle here using a profile design bottle cage to hold it nice and tightly. And that saddle is the ISM Adamo Racing 2 saddle, and that features that split nose, two-prong nose sort of design that we see quite commonly on triathlon bikes. And essentially all that allows you to do is sit a little bit further forward on the saddle, tilt your hips around, and relieves that pressure that you might get on the perineum on a standard saddle that isn't split, and just allows you to get really comfortably into that aero tuck, which is obviously very important for an Ironman. Now finally, I think we should take a look at some of the measurements and the weight of the bike. I don't know if I'll do that one. Okay, so let's start with the saddle height. That comes in at 720mm. And then let's look at the Aero Bar setup. So the pad setup, where I said it was quite a tight setup. And that, if we go from center of pad to center of pad, that is 140mm, so quite tight. If we went from the very edge to the inside edge of the other side, we are around 55mm, so really quite close, just enough room for his Garmin mount there. Now the reach, so going from the back of the aero pads, elbow pads to the saddle, we're roughly talking around 500mm, or just under actually, around 490mm. And we're somewhere around 9.45 to 9.5 kilograms. Well, there we go, that is Jan van Berkel's Factor Slick Pro bike. And I've got to say, it's probably one of my favorite custom paintworks to date. It's even got his Berkelized logo on here there. I just absolutely love it. Now, if you like this bike and the video, just hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more videos from GTN, just click on the globe and subscribe. If you'd like to see more pro bikes, why not go to our pro bike playlist by clicking just down here. And if you'd like to see how to improve your average speed on the bike, just click down here.